It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. My plan was to do this every 2 years.
So the intention was to buy real estate, buy another property, hold that property, and then move on and do another one.
Yeah, so the strategy here was to take advantage of a few things. One,
and I'm so excited to introduce you to an amazing guest. She is my tax professional, a badass female business entrepreneur. Kathryn, because your goal, right, was buying a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
And did you just quickly fix it up and say, sweet, that's how it went? You've added some value to the property. How did that go for you? That's amazing. I mean, they don't show you this stuff on TV.
No.
Right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome again to another episode of the Seattle Living and Wealth Building Podcast. So happy to have you guys on the show. We've got our usual suspects here. Michael Dapper.
Hello.
Justin Day.
Hello.
And I'm so excited to introduce you to an amazing guest. You're going to want to stick around for this. He is my tax professional, friend, multi-time client. So she's a multi-time investor, homeowner. You're going to learn a lot. You might learn some tax advice. You might learn about the ups and downs of owning real estate. You may come out profitable on the end, but it's not always as easy as it looks on Instagram. So better stick around. It's going to be a fun one. Welcome to the show, Kathryn.
thank you.
Thanks for coming out here. So how have things been? She's also a badass female business entrepreneur. So we're definitely going to touch on that as well. How has 2023 been for you?
So far, amazing.
Okay.
A lot of changes, starting a new company, moving back to Seattle. Can't wait to see what the rest of the year holds.
Yeah, very exciting. There's a lot that happened this year for Kathryn, but we're going to rewind a little bit and go back to when you moved here to Seattle, right? At that point, you had previously been in the Phoenix area. You owned a home over there, but what brought you to Seattle, and then why did you start to buy in the Seattle market?
Yeah. So I moved to Seattle initially for this gorgeous area that we live in, but also for my career, right? There's a lot of opportunity here with the tech sector, real estate, you name it. The Pacific Northwest is ripe with opportunity, and as a tax accountant, I am a needed commodity up here. So that's what brought me here. And once I got here, I spent my first 2 years renting, getting to know the area, understanding the market a little better, understanding the mind-blowing price point that things started at compared to Phoenix, where I was coming from at the time. So I think, once I hit that 2-year mark, had that really good job, sort of growing my career on one side, I wanted to start building wealth on the other. So that was the impetus for getting into real estate in the Seattle market.
Okay, great. So how did you settle on your first place, and did you have a ton of money for a down payment? You cashed some stock options. How did that happen?
I wish I had those stock options, but no. So I did not have a ton of money going in, right? So it was really important to me that the place that I found, that I felt it was more or less a sure thing. So I was looking for a few things. One, at a price point that I could even think about getting into, right? Which took me to mostly fixer-uppers and a smaller profile property, right? Something I knew I could handle solo, and something I could get into with some cash left over so that I could do the renovations I knew would be needed. But that also helped me with my second goal, was making sure I was buying a property that needed something for me, right? Because that's how we build in that profit margin into an investment property, right? We don't buy the best house on the block and just pray that the market keeps growing and the value keeps going up. So I was on the search for something really particular, right? And thankfully, my price point lent itself to fixer-uppers, right? So there, I was able to build in that value.
So the mentality for you, Kathryn, was that you were looking for a primary residence that you get into the real estate market here in Seattle, but it was also an investment.
Yeah.
So you had that mentality of the investment, which is unique because I don't think I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that many people really have that mindset of it being truly both.
Yep.
I mean, forgive me if I'm correct, but it sounds like you don't leave.
Forgive me if I'm correct.
Forgive me if I'm incorrect. Sorry. But if you were, you went and you had the intention of only owning a home for a couple of years and then making a change in an upgrade from that point or whatever it may be. So the intention was to buy real estate, buy another property, hold that property, and then move on and do another one. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the strategy here was to take advantage of a few things. One, buying a residence as your primary residence usually gets you a lower interest rate. You don't have to put 20% down, right? So those two things were going to work in my favor with going in at a lower budget than maybe the average buyer in Seattle. And then I also wanted to make sure I was taking advantage of the principal home exclusion, right? Which gives us a tax-free transaction as long as we've owned and lived in the home for at least 2 years. So this 2-year timeline was the intent that I set out with, right? I wanted it to both be my livelihood where I would live, but I wanted it to then fold into being an investment for me down the road. My plan was to do this every 2 years. Meeting that threshold, 2 years, give or take, right? Depending on the market, if it was a good time to buy the next property and move. I can say that this is not an easy thing to set out to do, right? Moving your household approximately every 2 years is a lot of work.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. I mean, even everything, changing your addresses alone with all your stuff, right? That takes forever to accomplish. And also making sure you're running lean with your belongings. It's easy to just pack up and go and you're not paying movers $4,000 every time you want to move your household.
So as a tax professional, though, I mean, that was a big part of the mentality for you was every 2 years you could essentially avoid those capital gains for a period of time, or, you could obviously utilize it as a 1031 down the road. But for you had the intention of, first of all, there's other things that are beneficial in addition to just simply the tax benefits. You actually can utilize a primary residence mortgage rate when you're buying a property as a primary residence, utilizing it as a primary residence for 2 years, and then buying a new property with that primary residence mortgage rate. And so therefore it makes it that much more affordable for people as opposed to buying an investment property where you're not using it as your primary residence.
Yep. And I will say, it was my intention before I moved out of the property to make sure that I refinanced it because I was going to do some work on each property and add value. I knew that I could drop my PMI a lot sooner than waiting out like a 20 to 30% equity, right? So there was this intention that although I'm only putting a little bit down and I don't want to say it was bleeding, but there's a couple $100 a month, right, that are going to PMI. And so having these strategies in place to make sure each facet of the property was as successful as it could be, right? From the money that was actually being invested and placed into this asset, the interest I was paying, insurance, PMI, all of these things, right, were being accounted for as I went, which just kept growing the bottom line as we go.
So did you see like the end goal to this plan as what was the goal? Was the goal to buy the bigger, more expensive house that you couldn't afford in your first purchase, and that's the reason why you're kind of trading up, or were you trying to save some of those proceeds along the way, or was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, so I would say the intention was just to build wealth. I wasn't after my big dream home at the time because it was just me, right? That's all I was providing for. So at this point in my life, I wanted financial stability. So that's all I was after, and I wanted to use all the tools, whether it was tax law or lending, to my advantage to make that happen over the course of 5 or 6 years, to do what I could in that time frame and then reassess.
Right. Did you ever think about holding a property and renting it out?
Yeah. So the first house I did. So Evanston, I lived in for 2 years and then rented it for about 2. And then, as we know, during COVID, the market was going crazy in Seattle. So 2021 rolled around and it was starting to cool off by 2022. So I just felt like the time to sell that little Seattle house was getting close. I didn't want to kind of miss this boom that was happening. It wasn't a high cash flowing rental the way the numbers were working, which is hard in our market, right? Our price points are so high, sometimes it's hard to cash flow really well in Seattle. So it just seemed like a good idea to sell it, grab all the capital out of that property. It was a tax-free transaction with an asterisk, minus the time it was a rental. See your tax advisor for residences that are converted from primary use to investment use. But it was the right time. I'd lived in it 2 out of the past 5 years, 6 more months to a year more, and I would have lost that tax-free transaction. So it made sense to sell that first one. Otherwise, I would have kept it longer term.
Yeah. I think it just shows, right? The good thing about this is you had a plan in place, right? You didn't go into buying your first place without a well thought out process. You happen to have an advantage over other people having a very clear understanding of what the benefits are of buying something as a primary residence, knowing that you can get a deferral on any gains that you might get, if you live in it for 2 years. So you had all these pieces, but let's talk about, you got some money together, you made an offer on this cute little bungalow. So was it like perfectly move-in ready? Did you have any challenges? Because your goal, right, was buying a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
And did you just quickly fix it up and say, it's sweet, that's how it went, and now I have some, you've added some value to the property?
Yeah.
Or how did that go for you? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Oh my. So this was my first real endeavor at buying a fixer-upper, and mind you, living in it while doing it.
So you weren't an accountant and a contractor.
Yeah, it was not.
Okay.
Nope. So one of the hurdles, right, was finding a contractor that I trusted, a contractor that could work in a timeline that was reasonable. So this was a 2-bed, 1-bath, and we were living in it. And the thing that needed the most attention was the bathroom. So
How did you make that work?
yeah, honey bucket in the backyard.
I thought those were just for the contractor.
No,
Those are for the homeowners as well?
The homeowner that is deciding to live in a house while it's being renovated.
Well, the only bathroom is being renovated, so
Yes.
that's your choice.
And I chose winter to do this. So, 1 a.m. in the snow, hitting the honey bucket was brutal. In the dark backyard. Yeah. So it was an experience I'll never forget. But it was a passion project, right? So I sort of laughed at myself every time I was, freezing outside or whatever. But the problem.
How long did that last? How many
So
weeks did you have to
finish? It
fix your
was like
honey
8
bucket?
weeks.
Okay.
And I remember, and again, no shower, right? Thankfully, the employer I was working for, we had showers at the office. So I would go to work early,
Right.
shower at the office, pretend like everything was fine, but still living in a construction zone.
That's amazing. I mean, they don't show you this stuff on TV.
No.
Right.
Yeah, they just show you with a little hammer and
Stratus high fashion before and
they look really cute or
It's good. It's in 7 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
this is mind-blowing.
it was a passion project start to finish. I mean, I always had an interest in interior design. So I had a really fun time choosing all my finishes and, figuring out the right choices inside this space and making sure to stay with the 1940s character of the home, and not putting in some super modern looking thing in what was still a very charming little bungalow, right? So it was important that I stayed authentic to the home itself, which I think just helped bring out the rest of the charm that was still there.
And you did, right? Like, and now if you told somebody you bought a little $500,000 single family home in Greenwood, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Right? So not all parts of Seattle had kind of blown up. So this was maybe 5 blocks north and 5 blocks west and 5 blocks east of like the perfectly desirable area, but it was like right on the edge, which allowed you to get this, great house for $500,000.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Why didn't you go into like a condo or a townhome? What was your thought process there?
Yeah. For me, I mean, I do believe that I feel the land holds value, right? So this had one of the largest lots in that area, especially on that street. So it was important to me that even though this was a fixer-upper for me, eventually someday it could be a tear down for someone else. So to know that there was inherent value in the size of this lot, either if someone wanted to add on to the house that had a lot of money, or again, tear it down and do a brand new build there was value in that lot size. At the time, I had wanted a yard, a place to have a garden and all of these things. So there were still other reasons that were more personal than investment. But, condos come with HOAs and a board and rules. And it was really important that I felt like I wasn't being held back in a lot of ways with my first purchase in Seattle.
Yeah. That's not something you necessarily know because you're a tax accountant. But, in a growing city, land becomes more finite, as the city grows. So that's where a lot of value is in the land. A lot of times people will compare the same house on a large lot to the same house on a tiny lot, and they'll have a hard time with the value, and they'll not understand it because especially in this place like Seattle, there's so much inherent value built in the land. So the cool thing is that all worked out, right? Let's talk about kind of numbers just to paint a picture, right? So 5% down, you had a $25,000 investment. Then you did some, what did you do in renovation?
Yeah, so we renovated the bathroom, redid all of the plumbing, brand new roof, repainted the house, replaced about 50% of the windows, replaced the back door, some landscaping.
Didn't replace.
The electrical, which would have just required ripping out all the walls. It just wasn't something I was willing to go. I might as well have just done a complete gut, remodeled the kitchen, all of it. So that's kind of where I drew the line, was at the necessities, right? And things that would provide curb appeal too, like painting the exterior, and some landscaping.
Yeah. So that all makes sense, right? So then you did that, you $50,000, then a little bit more to get the property ready when it was time to sell. Then, how do you put value on the time spent in the honey bucket or the stress of managing contractors? So I think the message, right? The real message is that, investing in real estate over the long term, especially with sweat equity, is going to give you profit, right? At some point in time. Not everybody knows exactly how challenging those can be. And you don't even know, generally speaking, until you get through it, whether it's you doing it yourself or managing contractors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It pays off.
It did.
It does.
Yeah, it absolutely did. At least doubled my money on that investment, even after realtor fees and all those things, right? So, and that's what I'll say is, owning real estate takes a team. No matter what phase you're in that property, you're not going to be completely solo in it. I guess unless maybe you are a general contractor with a real estate license, like maybe you can do it all.
Yeah. And I can give you a long list of those folks who have made pretty poor investments. So that doesn't guarantee you're going to do well either. Well, cool. So you have all these plans. Then what brought you from Seattle to buying a place in Marysville?
COVID.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I had hit the 2-year mark on this property, right, in 2020. And so, my brain started thinking again, right, is it time to move? Should I, this is the goal I set out for myself. COVID hit, as we all know, interest rates started to drop. So that was enticing. My boyfriend and I both had to work from home, having everyone, pushed out of their offices and working from home. We both had jobs, thankfully, that we were able to work from home for.
It's tough to be in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom.
Yeah, I was...
Working from home. Did you have your dog at that time?
No, we adopted him that summer. So, I was working on the kitchen island. He was in the guest bedroom, which was tiny. So there's a queen bed and his desk and barely any room to walk around. It was rough. So that was the decision to move out of the city, right? Seattle was also in, I would say, a state of mayhem at the time. So it was very enticing to think about looking at a larger property, really getting out of Seattle center. And that also gave me the ability to afford something, right? So the house we ended up buying in Marysville, if that had been in Bellevue, like no shot, right? No way.
Right.
Not in our price point. So Marysville, the center of downtown Marysville wasn't our dream town by any means. we were strategically surrounded by Lake Stevens, which is gorgeous, downtown Snohomish, which is just quintessential countryside. All of that was very close proximity.
Yeah.
I always heard the Snohomish was the new Ballard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Still or no?
I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for that, but
Yeah. I'll check it out maybe.
Yeah. So we found a house in one of the most desirable neighborhoods. It's up in the hills, so the views were incredible. The gardens, looking at the land, I already felt good about this investment before even walking inside the house. And again, part of my wish list with every purchase is it can't be turnkey, or else I'm not going to be able to grow value here. I've got to be able to do work to this house, add things to it to really make it a sound investment when we're all said and done. So this house fit that bill. There was enough in the house that made it stable to live in, enough space that we needed during COVID, and enough changes that I knew eventually we'd probably see some.
But everything you did was very cosmetic on that.
For this one, yes. Yeah. So we really just at the end of the day ended up adding a heat pump, which was great.
That's a big investment anywhere in the Seattle area these days with warming and everything.
Yep.
So that's always a good one.
Yeah, and some paint. And, I redid and designed the office space that was in that home, knowing that most families, probably at least one person is working from home. So custom office in there.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. You've mentioned this twice about adding value, looking for the house that needs some work to it. And I think, that's something that a lot of people are aware of, but I think they also assume that, okay, if I'm going to do that and add value and make money off of that value add, that I'm going to have to do it myself. And it seems like you've done some of it yourself, but you're also paying people to put in like a heat pump and stuff like that.
Yep.
So your stance is that you can still, if you find, a fixer upper within reason, even if you're paying contractors to do a roof and all these windows, all these other things, you can still make money in the long term.
That has been my experience. Yes.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And I think, I've always enjoyed doing a little of the sweat equity on my own.
Right.
What is within my skill set,
Right.
of course.
Right.
I can just say from my own personal experience that, I've been lucky enough to own a few different places where I needed to put that sweat equity into the place, and I did not have the resources to be able to have a contractor come out and do these different things. And, I'm asking friends to help me knock down walls or, let's hook up this electrical here. And, obviously there's a financial reward to all of it, but in many respects, part of the biggest thing that I always enjoyed was the emotional reward that you get afterwards. Seeing this, Evanston house that you had that was, let's just be candid, it needed some love. Right?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you put it on the market and you get top dollar for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, just look at the pictures. I mean, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous bungalow. And to me, that's just so rewarding and so satisfying to have that come to fruition.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to move there right now. Look at
It was really cool. It felt like I created something, even though I had a lot of hope along the way. But that was part of, I'm an artistic person, right? I love being creative, and this was just another way to be able to do that.
Yeah. And everyone just needs to really feel confident with what it takes to do that. I mean, as you said, you got that 1 a.m. honey bucket in the snow. You're doing tons and tons and tons of, construction. And I mean, for me, I remember we went 3 months without a kitchen. So I don't recommend that for anybody.
And that was before Uber Eats. That's what's
correct.
My goodness.
It was also before kids. So that's about the only reason I could ever have done that. But
just grilling hot dogs on your Weber charcoal grill.
Trust me, that is accurate. Yes, that is 100%. Washing dishes in a tiny little bathroom basin, like just craziness. Anyways.
Oh, yeah. I put together a patio one day. Yeah. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Wouldn't recommend it.
Put together some.
I had to jackhammer this concrete patio. And so at the time, I was pretty young. And I don't know if social media was that big up. It was pretty young. And I remember I posted something when we were done. I was like, hey, look at this. Clever's making a backyard deck and patio. Since I might have spent more time in a nightclub than I was doing handyman work. So
Right.
fair enough. Anyway, that's cool. So yeah, your thing about your Marysville property, it just had that incredible backyard oasis, right? So it had this very unique offering as well too.
Yeah.
So that's why when we sold it, we had something to make it stand out, even in a slower market, kind of setting a record like price per square foot and all that for the neighborhood. And that's why, right? Every property, I guess when it comes to selling a property, if you're thinking what brings value to a property, a lot of times people will pay a premium again for something that has a unique offering. And so the same thing kind of happened with the little cute bungalow. Despite the 2-bedroom, 1-bath smallness of it, it was cute AF, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's what sealed the deal for me on the Marysville purchase was the yard and the views. There were two things that, one, the view, that location, right? You can't create that out of thin air, right? And this garden is 30 years of growth and maturity. So, which again, I can't go plant this garden tomorrow. I will never live on a property like this again unless it has 30 years of growth and history on it, right? You can't plant that today.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said when you're looking at a property to assess the things that just have this value you can't add to it, no matter what you do.
Yeah. And for that property, a Boeing engineer and his wife said, that's the one. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was the wife who said, that's the one.
Yeah.
And so she made sure it happened.
Part of why we thought it is because it was in proximity to Boeing, the new Amazon warehouse, Tesla's moving in there. There was draw there that I knew industry would bring the right buyer eventually.
So what was it that kind of pulled you away from Marysville then? Because you sold that property this summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So what was the reason for moving away?
Yeah. So a life change for me. So I was starting to get, again, to the next 2-year mark, right? We've been in this house actually for closer to 3 years now. So I was getting the itch again. But I, in this journey to build wealth, I realized that my next investment needed to be my own company instead of another piece of real estate. So that's where that transition happened for me. In opening my own company, part of doing that was wanting to get back to Seattle, back to our community, our friends, the network that we have, the lifestyle that we loved, that we left during COVID. That was part of the reason why we wanted to move. But then also selling this asset that required time and energy from us, right? That yard, while amazing, takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of man hours. It was our weekends, right? So knowing that I needed to shift almost full focus to my growing company, we decided there were just too many reasons not to not sell, I guess, right? Like we needed to get out and I needed to refocus on the next investment. So that's why we sold.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing, right? If you think about this whole wealth building aspect of our podcast, right? A lot of people obviously don't do everything based on building wealth, right? A lot of it is, okay, how is this going to improve my lifestyle? Is this right for me and my family? But you made a strategic decision to invest in real estate to build some wealth. And now you actually made a strategic decision to divest of real estate in order to build wealth, being a female business entrepreneur, running your own company.
Yep.
And did you know all the answers, exactly how that was going to go when you started your business?
I feel like that's a leading question. No, but I will say, man, the network that I have around me, the real estate professionals, the financial advisors that I know, there was an army of people ready for me to make this jump and have supported me with their business, with their referrals. So, I think starting my own company would have been a lot more difficult if I didn't have the network that I had built over the last 6-7 years while being here. So, it hasn't all been easy, right? It's in some really long hours, a lot of sleepless nights, right? When I first made the jump or prior to making the jump, right? We can't predict the future, right? We don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah.
So it took all the faith I had, more than buying my first piece of real estate and sinking, most of my money into it, more than any other investment I had made. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you guys should know about this. Obviously, Kathryn is a incredibly bright person. So if you're interested in potentially being a client of Kathryn's, your business is welcometoclarity.com.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Tax and accounting.
yeah. How could they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So there's a contact form on the website. Just says contact, and it's just basically email and name and send me a little message. Let me know what you're looking for, and we'll just set up a discovery session together just so I can get to know you, and we can talk about if it's a good fit. And if it's not, if you're not at maybe the level where I need, we could work well together. I'm always happy to help folks, right? So just because we don't sign together doesn't mean I can't answer a few questions or help get you to someone that can be a good fit for you. So I work mostly with business owners, right? People that need me both as like a personal CFO and a business CFO, right? Where I'm really in their numbers and in their lives multiple times a year, right? If you work with me, we're not just going to say hi during tax season and that's it. So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of in your life a lot. So that's the level of client.
And I can attest to that. So yeah, it's been phenomenal. So congratulations on making that big decision this year.
Thanks.
To go back to the Marysville house, because one thing that we haven't really touched on was, you obviously made the move to a more rural environment when a lot of other people did as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were moving it out of the city center. Businesses were shutting down. They wanted more space. Story sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that a lot of people have moved back to the city centers just like you're doing. So you obviously had your reasons. So beyond, just simply what reasons did you have beyond, just simply wanting to be in a more urban environment again?
Yeah. It was really lonely. So, moving away from our community and being 45 minutes out, we had this amazing space and this beautiful yard, but no one to share it with, or very rarely would get to share it with people. And that I didn't realize how important that was initially, right? Or how much of a barrier that 45 minutes would turn out to be, right? So part of our decision to move was just that we missed our people and we missed sharing our home with those people, right? We from now on, we've always made sure we're in a place big enough where we have a guest suite. Like if you're our friends, there's always a bed for you and a bathroom, right? So when we make sure that that's in our budget.
Might be and
but that's just it helped me realize just another thing that was so important in life. No matter how much wealth we build or the house we live in, not being able to share it with people.
Yeah. Well, you can love your home all you want. And loving that home is important. But, the home that you build is filled with the people that are in it, right? So I think that's ultimately the most important thing. And that's not meaning to sound sappy or anything like that, but it's the truth. I mean, especially as real estate professionals, we all live where we live because it feels like that's where we should be.
Yeah.
So
I just remember this moment in Marysville. It was getting to the point where, friends weren't making it up anymore. And I was like, should we just get a roommate? Like we love that feeling of family and like sharing our lives and having more variety in our day. And I think that's the moment we're like, we got to get back to Seattle.
Well, I think it's interesting, obviously it suited its purpose and you were happy with, that purchase and it's
absolutely
part of your path of, your real estate goals. But then when it became, okay, well, now this isn't making sense anymore, or it's not like adding, because of you starting your business and then your distance from friends, you're able to pivot. And I think that's really important that people can go, this doesn't mean that it was a bad decision. It just means that what I want to do now is different. And now I'm going to leverage that good decision, to get me to the next ones.
Absolutely. And I'm so thankful for each of the homes that I've had because I've created amazing memories there. There's highlights in both of those homes that I will take with me forever.
Right.
So to your point, yes, no regrets on that decision.
Well, you obviously had a plan, right? You had a plan.
Yeah.
The plan changed. COVID happened,
Mhm.
life happened, and now you're morphing into a different plan, right?
Yeah.
So what does that plan look like for you in the future?
Yeah. So I think, for the next, I'll say about a year, right? Just continuing to focus on building the firm and making sure my clients are happy and healthy. And then, so looking to 2024, 2025 for potentially my next real estate investment, right? Once I feel like this new investment is stable, to then get back into it and keep going from there.
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, that's just proof that you have the goal of owning real estate. You have owned multiple properties. You are renting right now, but right now is not the right time for you to own a property. And that's okay. And that's, and that's part of your journey. As you said, you're building wealth in a different way right now. So that's awesome. Good for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So how's it like? What's it like to be back in Queen Anne? Let's talk about kind of community and maybe some of the favorite things that you can kind of pass along.
Yeah. I will say it was important to me moving back to the city with now having a dog that we were in a very walkable neighborhood, right? So while a downtown high-rise condo sounded awesome, taking the dog out twice a day for long walks, downtown just was not ideal. So Queen Anne was our number one neighborhood, right? The walkability there, the views, restaurants, shops. I mean, it has everything I want, right? Orange Theory's right there.
Yeah.
Ballet class at Pacific Northwest Ballet. Everything that I felt I lost when I moved out of Seattle is right there. And it's all within, a half a mile.
Yeah. You probably learned a lot about yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to go from Seattle, Greenwood to, Marysville, I mean, that's a big jump. And then obviously you're finding yourself again.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Queen Anne is the most expensive average price per square foot Seattle neighborhood there is. So you've landed in a very nice place.
We have. And I can't believe when we stumbled on this property, I had kind of a wish list, right? I really would have loved a fireplace and a deck and a rooftop balcony situation.
It's a great location and close to the grocery store.
And a guest suite, right, for all our friends and family. So the fact that we found a townhome in Queen Anne was just more than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
That was still within our budget. So very thankful.
Yeah. Love it.
So as a tax professional, I got one thing I've been wondering. So what horror stories have you experienced with your clients that, let's say have gone through, I mean, especially as three real estate professionals here, what horror stories have you seen for people that they can learn from? Like what advice can you give someone? Don't do this.
Yeah. So I'll elaborate a little bit, but what I'll say is always talk to your accountant before transacting, whether that's buying, selling, exchanging real estate, whatever you're doing. Talking to someone and running the numbers is vital. I mean, even if you think a lot of times there's tax code or rules or depreciation or there's something going on that you just might not have insight on that could make or break a decision for you. So I remember I had a client that they were in real estate, they were in investing, they were constantly flipping homes or
they knew what they were doing
it
in theory.
Right?
Yeah.
Doing a 1031 exchange, making sure they're rolling over that gain. And I'm going to do the tax return on one of their 1031 exchange the prior year. And I'm running the numbers, and they actually ended up selling this property or exchanging, technically this property, at a loss. So the only reason we would do a 1031 exchange is so that we don't have to pay tax on our gain today. We kind of roll it forward into the next property. So not only was this an unnecessary transaction, meaning they paid this third-party administrator, they went through having to identify the replacement property within a certain time frame. They went through all these hoops for no reason. They locked in their cash into this next property for no reason, right? So this exchange, if they had just sold the property at a loss, they would have been able to take a loss on their tax return, save some money there. they would have gotten all their cash out of the transaction, right, to be able to then go invest into something else and maybe not even use all of it, right, and be able to diversify into 2 more properties, and all because they didn't talk to their accountant.
Yeah, that's brutal. Was it an individual, or was it a couple, or?
It was an individual.
Okay,
This
got
was
it.
Years
So he only had himself to blame, or she?
Yeah, maybe just not to go through the process.
Didn't cause any marital problems or anything like that. Yeah. So that's a good question, Justin. And like it's very complex. You know, at one point, using TurboTax 1040 easy, it's way to go. And then, my life became more complex, and the more complex it becomes, and the more you need a true tax professional.
Yeah, well, and that just goes for all professionals in all fields, no different.
This is a plug for us coming up here.
It's no different. I mean, if you're talking about how much you can afford to buy a home, don't just go online and search a loan calculator and try.
Hey, search Wagner Real Estate Group.
Guess what? You talk to a loan officer who's able to give you a good understanding of different options that are available to you. You trust in your tax professional. You trust in your wealth manager. You trust in your real estate professional. I mean, I'm not gonna trust Maynard to clean my teeth for me. I'll tell you that much.
That's gross.
Yeah, I think. I mean,
well, thank you for not having that trust in. That's pretty funny.
Your Tuesday appointment.
All right. So again, keyword search Wagner Real Estate Group in summary, and welcome to clarity.com.
Yeah,
so that's key as well too. Well, I think this has been a phenomenal show. We covered a lot of topics. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your tips, your honey bucket experience, all those things that are all part of the reality of life and investing. And again, one more time, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
You can just visit my website, welcometoclarity.com.
Okay, amazing.